Now let's take a look at the process for texturing an object by exporting the UV map to a paint program like Photoshop or GIMP or Krita, and how we might use that to then lay down the texture and layer multiple textures over the UV map. So I'm going to tab into edit mode here for the couch, and keep in mind that this is only for the fabric part of the couch, not the wood part. I've separated that out into its own object. So I've tabbed into edit mode, hit A to select everything, and I'm going to come over here and hit A and select everything in the UV map as well. And I'm going to go to UVs and export layout. Now, when you're exporting the UV map out of Blender, you need to make a decision as to what size this UV map is going to be. And for my particular purposes, I'm going to make this map 2K, or 2048 by 2048. It's currently set to 1K, but I feel like there are times when this particular object may pretty much fill up the screen if the camera is very close to the object. So I'm going to go ahead and call this 2K, 2048. Now, if this happens to be too big and it's slowing down my scene, slowing down my game, then I can always go back into Photoshop and save out a smaller version. And I'm going to come over to my textures folder here, and I'm going to save it in my textures folder. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a folder here, and I'm going to call it couch. And within this folder, I'm going to have all of my files that I'm going to be using to texture this object. I'm going to have the UV map, I'm going to have the Photoshop file, a color map, maybe a normal map. So all of that's going to be here in one folder. So I'll call this couch underscore UVs and export. Now let's go to Photoshop. Here in Photoshop, I'm going to press Control or Command O to open, and I will browse to that textures folder and my couch folder here, and here are my couch UVs. So I'll click open, and there they are. So I don't know if it's hard to see here, but if I zoom in really far, you can see that there is the UVs from Blender. Now I'll press Control or Command 0 to go to full screen there, and I'm going to change this layer to call it UVs so I know what it is. And I'll go ahead and open up that fabric seamless texture as well. So Control or Command O, and let's go find our texture in our textures folder. Here it is. All right, so now that we have this, I'm going to press Control or Command A and then Control C to copy. And now I'm going to come over to my couch file and press Control or Command V to paste. Now I'm going to take this layer now and drag it below the UV so I can see the UV map over the texture. I'll press the V key to go to the Move tool, and I'll press Shift and click and drag and reduce the size of this somewhat. So these are the pillows here. These are the back of the couch. So what I want to do is try and guess as best as I can how big this should be. So I'm going to zoom in here and just see if I can get it to be about the size that I want it. So if this is the back cushion, maybe the size of the pattern should be about like that. Let's give that a try. So I'm going to move this up here and hit Enter, and now I'm going to press Alt and Shift and click and drag that out and put it right up next to the first one. Now I need to turn on snapping, so I'm going to go up to the View menu and turn on Snap. It's Shift Control Command semicolon. So I'll turn that on. So now as I move this, it will snap on to the first tile. Now I'm going to press the arrow key one time and move it over just a little bit so it ensures that it's sealed up or that there isn't a space between the two tiles. And now I'm going to just press Alt Shift again, and that will duplicate the tile, and I'll snap it on and then move it over one with the left arrow key, and I'll do that again kind of all the way over here. Let me zoom out just a bit with Control minus, and I'll press the space bar to use the hand tool to move over here. Alright, so Shift Alt again, snap, move over one with the left arrow key, and I'm just going to do this a bit and kind of tile this all the way over. Now I can do this the whole way over, and that might be the way to go. Let me go ahead and do that. What I can do is select a couple of these, so I'll shift select a couple of the layers here like this, and then press Alt, Shift, and click and drag and duplicate these over and move it over one to the left. And now maybe I'll select, these two here, Alt, Shift, and duplicate these over. There we go. Now I can select all of these layers here and do the same thing going down. So I'll Alt Shift this and move it down, snap it, move it up with the up arrow just so we seal it off a bit, and keep on going. And I'll do one more up here at the top. It looks like I need another one up here, so Alt Shift, and I'll bring this all the way up. Snap it there, move it down with the down key, and I'll do one more like that. Now I'm going to come over here to the layers window, and I'm going to select all of these. Just select the top one, scroll down, shift select that bottom one, and then I'm going to press Control or Command E, and that will merge everything down into one layer. Alright, so I'm going to call this fabric. So let's test this. How do we do on this? I'm going to turn off the UV layer, and I'm going to press Shift, Alt, Control or Command W, and that will open up the Export As window here. Now you can also go up to File, Export, Export As right here. And now let's just export this out. I've got it set as a PNG. It's 2048 by 2048. That's good. I'm just going to click Export, and I will take it over to that couch folder, and I'll change it from couch UVs to couch_C for color map. I'll hit Export, and there we go. So now if I go back to Blender, let's take a look at it here. I'm going to switch this texture here with the one we just created. So I'll hit the X to delete that or remove it out of the texture node, and I'll click Open, and I'll come over to my textures folder, couch folder, and there's my color channel or my color map. I'll click Open, and there we go. So now it looks like we've created our texture pattern way too small, but we haven't, in that over here under the scale fields in our texture panel, we still have 12 here. So let's take this down to 1 and see how we did. Yeah, that's pretty good. So that was a little more work than we did before, but now we have more control over it. So let's say we wanted to put some dirt and stains on this. If we go back to Photoshop here, let me open up some grunge maps. I love grunge maps. It's just textures of dirt. So here's one. I have a grunge map from textures.com. Here's another one. Here's another one. So it's just maps of dirt and just nastiness. I like it. It gives things a nice lived-in feel. So I'm going to go, I think, with this grunge map. So I'm going to select this one and open this in Photoshop. And I'm going to press Control or Command A and then Control or Command C to copy this. And then I'm going to come over here and paste it in here. So I'm going to press Control or Command V to paste that there. Now I'm going to turn on my UV map so we can see them overlaid over the textures. And now I'm just going to maybe take this, I'm going to try and just take this over the whole thing like this. Let's see how this works. I'll change this from the normal blending mode to multiply, and that gives it kind of a nasty feel to it. Let me turn off the UVs and see how it looks. Oh yeah, that looks just awful. So let's try this. I'll press Shift-Alt-Command-W again to export, and I'll export all and overwrite that couch color map and replace. Now let's go back to Blender and see how we did here. I'm going to remove that, hit open, go to that couch folder, and let's choose that couch color map again. Oh my, that is just nasty. So you can see now we have more control over our textures. I wasn't able to overlay that dirt layer by just importing the seamless map directly into Blender or Unity. But with this now, I can make adjustments. I can adjust the opacity of this, let's say. Say I can take the opacity down a bit. Maybe that's a little too grungy, right? And I can add more layers, more grunge or dirt or textures on this, however much I want. But let me just show you how I would clean this UV map up, clean this color map up before I took it into Unity or before I submitted it to a production pipeline if I were working for a studio or was working with a team of developers. So what I'd do is I'd, one, make sure that all of these layers have been condensed down to one. So I'm going to select all of these and press Control or Command E. This other layer, I'll call this dirt. And now if I turn the UVs back on, what I can do is select the area outside of the UVs and delete it. So let me zoom in just a bit here. I'm going to come over to the Magic Wand tool here in Photoshop, select the UVs layer, and then click anywhere outside the UVs. And that will select everything all around the UV islands. Now it looks like it didn't get these over here, so I'll press Shift and click over here as well. And that selected all of those. Maybe Shift click here and over here. So I'm just trying to get all of these areas selected. There we go. Now I'm going to delete these areas for both of these layers, but I want to make sure I don't infringe on the UV islands themselves. So, here's one right here. So I'm going to come up to Select, and I'm going to choose Modify, and I'm going to contract, maybe by 2 pixels. There you go. And that contracts the selection a little bit to get the selection away from the edges of the UV islands. Now I'm going to select the dirt layer and press Delete. Now I'm going to select the fabric layer and press Delete. And now I'll press Control or Command D to deselect everything. Then I'm going to create a new layer right down here at the bottom. And I'll select this and make it black. And then I'll use that Paint Bucket tool and click out here. So now if I turn off the UV wires, you can see I have a nice UV map, cleaned up a bit, and ready for export. So I'll press Shift, Alt, Command, or Control W, and I'll export this out to my couch folder. I'll select that and overwrite that and replace it. Good. Now I want to save this Photoshop file as well. I'll press Control or Command S, and I'll save this as a PSD, a Photoshop file. Take the UVs off of the name and call it just couch.psd. So now I have the Photoshop file, the UV islands, and the color map all in one folder there. And click Save. All right. So now if I come back over to Unity and go to my couch fabric material here, I can remove this texture out of the albedo. I'll just click that little dot and then choose None. And now that's been removed. Now I'll bring that new texture in. I'll bring up my Finder window. Here it is, couch_C. I'll drag that in. And now I can take that texture and drag it into the albedo. And once again, we still have 12 here in the tiling, so I'll take that back down to 1. And there we go. I can adjust that material a bit so it isn't quite so shiny. I can use the metallic and the smoothness here to reduce the shininess of it so it looks a little bit more like a fabric. And there we go. Our disgusting couch has been textured.